So I usually make videos about my travels and post it on this channel. But today I'm gonna do a little different video, but I'm still gonna post it on my channel because this has been a journey that I've been on for many years. It's kind of my fitness journey, how to stay healthy. A lot of it has involved walking, so I'm just gonna walk in the woods and talk about it today. It's also involved weightlifting. Which is hugely important, and then getting the nutrition right to support both those things. The whole goal is to stay healthy so that I can do RV travel in my old age and do hikes and bike rides and all the things that I like to do. So in this video, what I want to do is I want to go over kind of my journey, how I got to where I'm at today, because I feel like I'm in a pretty good place. I want to go over my blood work that I had run at the end of last year and the update to it this year, because everything moved the way I wanted it to and needed it to. And then I want to talk about my go forward plan. And then finally, what I want to talk about is if I had it to do over today and I had to start knowing what I know now, if I didn't want to waste 13 years to get to where I am today, what would I do? So I kind of went through and I forced ranked that list. So I'll go through that at the end of the video. And then if any of this makes sense to you and you'd like to try it, use that as your compass. And then you won't be stupid like me and waste 13 years of your life. So I guess it all kind of started 13 years ago. I was a mess. I mean, you can look at the before and after picture. I was just in bad shape. And I knew I needed to make a change. I had no clue what to do. I'm not an athletic person. I'm not a fitness person. I just knew I needed to do something different because I was on a bad road and going nowhere fast. I was completely sedentary, so I knew I needed to change that. But I basically wasted 9 years. I was kind of just doing what everything I read said I needed to do. And over the last few years, I think I figured it out, what I needed to do to kind of thrive. I mean, looking back over like the last 13 years, I feel like I wasted a ton of time. I was completely frustrated tons of times because I could never figure out, there's so much advice out there. And I just wanted somebody to tell me what to do. I'm a rule follower. You tell me what to do, and if it works, I'll do it. The problem is everybody tells you to do something different. Everybody has the magic bullet to be healthy. Everybody knows what you need to be doing. They have the program that you need to be doing. They tell you what to eat, what not to eat, blah, blah, blah. And I tried tons and tons of it. And I feel like this year, in 2023, it was the year that I finally figured everything out. I had pieced together parts of it here and there, but I think this year was the first year where I kind of put together, what is the plan that kind of worked for me. So none of this is advice. I don't know nothing, but it's what I did. And I feel like it has worked pretty well for me. So where I started, I was 38 years old. It was 2010, it was 13 years ago. So I'll just read the description of what I felt like. I was weak, fat around the middle, inflamed, my body hurt, my joints hurt, and I regularly would have headaches that would put me on my back for 24 hours at a time. When I walked, I was winded. Yes, every single time. I sat at a desk all day. I would drink cans of soda while I worked. If I went on vacation and it required walking, I would throw my back out and I'd wind up on the couch for 2 days with back pain. I ate all kind of processed foods, sugary drinks, fried foods, cheeseburger, fries, and a soda. I mean, that was on the menu probably half the meals that I ate. I was on a horrible path. And I didn't know what I needed to do. I didn't know what I needed to eat. I didn't know what I needed to do for exercise. But I knew I needed to do something besides what I was doing because, I was 38 years old and I was headed down a very dark path. I didn't need blood work to tell me that. I just could look in the mirror. I could walk around and feel like this is not how I wanted to be. So in 2010, I like to ride a bike. So I thought, I'll go ride a bike. I got my little mountain bike out and I just started going on rides. I got a GPS so I could track my mileage. And I started going on bike rides. And each time I would go, I would just ride a little further and a little further. And I was stupid. I would take Gatorade with me and I would drink sugar drink the whole time I was there. I would completely offset any calories I was burning. I thought I needed to be hydrated, which requires a sugar drink. I'd lifted weights back in high school and college. So I started lifting weights in the basement. And then I got into P90X, which is horrible. But I figured the P90X people, those guys look very healthy and fit. So I need to do P90X to be like them. And I did this for a year or two. And then I stopped because it was horrible. I was spending all this time. I was getting no results whatsoever. I was sore all the time from doing these insane workouts that were completely stupid. So I basically quit. I gave up on my fitness journey because it sucked. By 2015, I decided, all right, I've got to get this under control. I measured my waistline. I knew I had Dunlap's disease. My belly had Dunlapped over my belt. So I got a piece of string. This is very high tech. I got a piece of string and I put it around my gut and then I pulled the string out and measured it to figure out how fat I was around the fattest part, the gut. And I was 42 inches around. That's massive. I'm 69 inches tall. And I decided I had to get that under control. I had to get my waistline down. So I got the bike out again and I started riding the bike. And for a couple of years, I rode pretty seriously. I think one year I did over 2,000 miles on the bike. I ended that year with a 100-mile bike ride. I mean, I was a pretty serious road biker. And it worked. My waist went down. I went from a 42-inch gut down to 35 inches. So, I mean, that's a pretty significant downgrade. Yeah, I felt better. I felt like I was in pretty good shape. Later, I think a couple of years later, I realized that the string I was using, I guess it was a nylon string. I did not realize this when I was using it, but the string over time was stretching out. I was actually back up to or at 38 inches around, which was still too big. I think after that, I kind of cut back on the biking, and Emily and I started walking more, and that all worked pretty good. From 2017 to like 2020, I kept my waistline under control. I mean, I would call myself healthy at that point. Now, all during this 2015, this kind of second phase where I was getting my cardio kind of under control, I was experimenting with all kind of diet stuff. I was reading about diet. I think Forks Over Knives, a movie came out. I started researching vegetarianism, veganism, figuring out what not to eat and why not to eat it. I went full vegan at one point and gave that a whirl and did it for a pretty good while. Cut out all meat, dairy, all that kind of stuff. And I remember it was we had just been on a little kayaking trip, not even taxing, just floating down a river. And I remember one day just feeling absolutely horrible. I had no energy. I was sweating and it wasn't even hot. And I just thought, this is not right. And literally, that was probably the most frustrated I'd ever been with all of it. Because I was just like, will someone who knows how to be healthy, just tell me how to be healthy. I'm tired of trying to figure it out on my own. I'm tired of thinking about it. I just want somebody to tell me what to do and I'll do it. So, I mean, I felt like at that point I had made pretty good progress, but I was still nowhere near what I would call thriving. I looked better. My scale numbers were better. My measurements were better, but I just felt horrible. So that was 2019, and I knew I needed to make a change. Usually during the winter, when I couldn't ride my bike or walk or do all that kind of stuff, because I didn't like being outside, I would go to the gym and I would get on these machines and I would lift weights and knucklehead around on the machines for a little while. And one day I went to the Y and the machines that I used were no longer there. And I had a friend, Wes. Wes is a beast. And he had been lifting weights and posting pictures on his Instagram and videos of him lifting all these heavy weights. And I had seen the program that he had been using. And I thought, well, if I can't use the machines I want to use, maybe I should try to do that. So at the end of 2019, I had lunch with Wes. He told me do it. And I started down that path. And honestly, that's the best thing I ever did. So thanks, Wes. So the program he recommended it's called Starting Strength. Starting Strength's a great program, and I'm not going to go into the details of it other than it's kept me busy for 3 or 4 years, learning about it, learning how to do, you do the main lifts. You do squats, deadlifts, bench press, like overhead press. You don't really do much else. So I nervously went over to the gym bro section of the gym, and I was basically squatting the empty bar the first day, so 45 pounds, and could honestly barely do that. What made it real fun was I was squatting in a rack next to a lady who was squatting 225 for reps on that same day. So about a year later, after doing the program for about a year, and this was during COVID, so they shut the gyms down mid-COVID, I got up and I got some pretty respectful numbers on the bar. And I wrote a little article about that, and it's actually the most viewed article on my website. More people have read that than any article I've ever done. And I think it's because I'm just a normal person who was pathetically out of shape and weak. And I think, if I can do it, anybody can do it. I can't say enough about Starting Strength and how important that's been in my overall health journey. I've read, they've got a couple of books, and then they have another sister publication called The Barbell Prescription. And it was honestly, that's probably the most life-changing book I've ever read about just kind of why you need to be lifting weights, why it's so important. It's important to everything. So there will probably never be a time in my life again where I don't lift weights in some capacity. And then Mark Ripeto's book, the blue book, which teaches you how to do all the lifts safely. And then I've watched hundreds of their videos on how to do, you would think squatting's pretty easy. You just put the bar on your back and squat, stand back up. There's a lot going on in a squat, especially if you've got a big heavy weight on your back. I've done it wrong, I've done it right, and I probably am still not doing it totally correctly, but I don't get hurt, which is what I was worried about. I've had some nagging injuries that, but nothing catastrophic, and I have worked through those nagging injuries, and it has taught me as much about that as anything about just how to work through an injury and how to rehab it. Weightlifting, extremely important in my journey, life-changing. Strong people are harder to kill. My whole goal, I'd like to be able to squat a lot and deadlift a lot, but I literally literally don't care about any of that. I use the numbers on the bar to tell me if I'm making progress, and I'm always trying to make progress, and I try to stay consistent and go to the gym. I find it best when I go 4 days a week, and I've got the program worked out where that works best for me. And I'm in a really good spot right now. I tried some new things in 2023 that were not starting strength, and there were parts of that I liked, and I've incorporated those in with the starting strength lifts, and I feel like I've got a really good program right now, kind of firing on all cylinders on that front. 2023 is kind of a different goal for 2023, so let me talk about that. I still had never figured out the nutrition side of things. And I figured since I was weightlifting, obviously veganism, I felt horrible. And I figured if I was weightlifting, I needed to be eating a lot of protein. So I changed my diet. I did a 180 on my diet. And I went basically carnivore. I was eating egg and steaks and ground beef, cheese and dairy. That's all I was eating. And I was gaining weight. And I pretty much needed to do those things because I was lifting weight. And I did that for the first year. And then in 2022, I like to read and research stuff. And kind of a separate journey I was going down was I was learning about regenerative farming. And I did not initially think that that was a nutrition or health related topic, but the more and more I learned about it, the more I learned that it absolutely was. So in 2022, I wound up researching regenerative agriculture, which led me to Paul Saladino. Actually, my son Preston got me into Paul Saladino, who was originally named Carnivore MD, but he's not Carnivore MD anymore. Now he's just Paul Saladino. And this guy, everything he said made a lot of sense. Basically, he talks about eating an ancestrally appropriate diet, which is a lot of what I was doing, which was meat. The guy loves ground beef. Eat ground beef, it's the best thing you can eat. I eat tons of it. That's pretty much all I eat. But he had thrown carbs back in. During 2023, when I had been weightlifting, I would go into the gym some days fasted, no food, and I would do the lifts, or I would just eat meat and egg, but I wasn't really eating a lot of carbs at all. I was real low carb. And what I learned from Paul Saladino was that's a mess. My thyroid was probably all messed up, and I was still not metabolically kind of where I needed to be, and definitely not thriving. So one of the things he did in one of his podcasts that I listened to was he ran a lot of blood work, and he talked about the different values for the different, types of blood work that he ran. I did the same thing because I still felt like I wasn't right. I was still fat around the middle, and I knew that was a problem. I felt like I was still not metabolically healthy, which I knew was a problem, and I just wanted the blood work to kind of prove that out. So I ran all this blood work, hundreds of dollars worth of blood work, and that was the first time I'd had kind of comprehensive blood work done. I don't ever go to the doctor. I don't have a doctor. So this was a pretty big departure for me to spend a lot of money on a bunch of blood work because I'm also cheap. So what led me to say I need to run all this blood work? And I remember the day I did it. One day I was in the gym, and Preston and I were at the gym together, and we had been eating a ton and lifting heavy. I had just hit a PR on my squat. So I was like 190, about 190 pounds, and I had squatted 240 pounds for 3 sets of 5, and I just finished the final set of 5 reps. And I was so happy. It was the most I'd ever squatted, and it still is. I got done, I racked it, I turned around to Preston, who was filming it, and I was so happy, and I was like, man, I'm just so strong, I'm so happy. And I was wondering why he was kind of quiet, and I was like, what's his problem? Why is he not happy for me that I'm squatting all this weight? So I watched the video, and about halfway through the video, I realized exactly why he was upset. I was wearing a weightlifting belt, and my gut was hanging over the weightlifting belt. So needless to say, my squat was going up, but so was my body weight, and I was carrying a little extra around the middle. Seeing that video of myself, I knew that I was almost to the promised land of getting healthy. I had to get my body fat down. I had to get my waist size down. That being strong at all costs was not really where I wanted to be. So I ran all the blood work. Every number on that blood work told that exact same story. So now I had a video of my fat gut. I had hundreds of dollars worth of blood work, all telling the same story, that you're still not there. You still are not metabolically healthy. And if you're not metabolically healthy, here's the problem. It's going to lead to a lifetime of problems. Your chances of getting some kind of perpetual illness, diabetes, cancer, everything goes up when you're not metabolically healthy. So I just made the decision in 2023, I'm going to listen to everything Paul Saladino says. I'm going to get my diet right, and I'm going to get metabolically healthy. And then at the end of 2023, I'll run my blood work again, and if everything goes according to plan, I'll be healthy. And at that point, I'll be strong because I'm still doing weightlifting. I'll be in good cardio shape because we still walk a ton, and all my measurements would be better. The mirror would look better, the tape measure would look better, and all the blood markers would look better. So in 2023, I did the diet/nutrition plan I was using was called the Metabolic Blowtorch Diet, and it involved a lot of fasting. I couldn't do the heavy starting strength lifts, so I modified my workout program. I still went to the gym and did weight training. I did more biking, and I was doing the air bike. I call it Satan's tricycle because it sucks, but I was doing kind of low low intensity cardio on that. And I was doing a lot of fasting during the day, which is not optimal, but I was doing it because I had to. Pretty low carb on some days. If I wasn't weight training, I would do pretty low carb. Pretty much on days that I would go to the gym and lift weights, I would not go in low carb because that's really bad. So I did make that change in 2023, and that was part of that metabolic diet plan. So I would go to the gym, I would have carbs, but not a ton. And then on the other days, there were 4 days a week, 3 days a week in the gym, and 4 days a week no gym. Those were fasting days, and I would do low intensity cardio, not really getting your heart rate up too high, and no carbs. I mean, none. You would eat protein, fat, and that's it. And it worked. I was 193 pounds when I started. My gut was 38 inches around. I did it in 2 phases. So I did my first phase, I got down to the 174, which was my goal weight, and I got my gut down to 34 and a half, which was the goal. I wanted my gut to be half my height, so 69 inches tall, 69. So 34 and a half around, and that's the fattest part of my gut. And I wanted to get my weight down. I wasn't really worried about my weight, but I knew it would come down. And then I waited 12 weeks, and I kind of maintained for 12 weeks. So it took me 11 weeks to do that first cycle. I waited 12 weeks, and I maintained everything. And then I did a second cycle where I got down to like 164, and I kept my waist at about the same size. I kept it about 34 and a half. So mission accomplished on that front. It's the end of the year. So I just reran all the blood work. I'm going to go through it in this video. Long story short, every single indicator in my blood work was perfect. It all went the direction I expected it to go and was all within the range that I wanted it to be. My thyroid was great. My testosterone went way up. All my metabolic measures that I measure were down, and down considerably. So I've learned a lot over the years, and I've learned kind of what works, what does not work, and what things are important for me to do and things that I absolutely should not be doing. What I'm doing now and forevermore, I'm not going to run another one of these programs. I'm basically just tweaking things at this point. So my goal is to get more weight on the bar, which means I'm back on lifting heavy compound lifts, which means I'm gaining weight, and that's fine. I want to gain weight. I'm back up to 174, so I've gained the 10 pounds back off that last little run. My body fat will go up because of that, and I'm fine with that. No big deal. But what I'm not fine with is gaining too much around the middle. So I'm watching my waistline, and I'm basically watching my diet. You know, fasting is not anything I want to be a part of. I do a lot more carb eating these days. You know, and I don't eat like sugar, processed sugar. That's devil food, but honey and fruit. I want to make sure that when I'm going into the gym, I've got plenty of energy stored up and ready to rock and roll. That's what I'm doing now. I'm just kind of tweaking. Some of my weight's kind of going back up. My body fat's going back up because my weight's going up, and more weight is going on the bar. I'm not back to PR level on everything, but I'm darn close on all the lifts after being off for basically almost a year from doing the heavy lifts. I stopped last February when I got deep into my new plan, and I restarted this year, probably in October, and I've worked my way back up. I'm in the neighborhood on all my lifts again at being at PRs. I'll spend the next few months doing them and getting my diet worked out. The only goal I have is I do not want to get fat around the middle. So I'm watching my waistline. If it starts moving in the wrong direction, then I adjust my diet. So I'm just doing that. I'm trying to figure out what's going to work optimally long term. And once I get that dialed in, I think I'll be in good shape and I'll hopefully live forever. And that's the goal. So I want to go through my blood work real quick. In 2021, I was mainly worried about my ferritin level, because I had read dumping iron, and I wanted to know what my iron level in my blood was. And I also pulled some testosterone numbers at that point because I wanted to know what my testosterone was. So my ferritin level back then, at the end of 2021, was really high, 251. Way higher than I wanted it to be. And then my testosterone was 458, which was way lower than I wanted it to be. And I basically had spent 2022 fixing those things. So I started giving blood, donated blood 6 times that year, and I got my ferritin level down to 43, which was lower than I wanted it to be. So I gave a little too much. And my testosterone actually went down during the year, probably because of some things that I will change in 2023, and part of why I did a more comprehensive blood work panel. At the end of 2022, I did a full-blown blood work run, and I pulled tons and tons of stuff, and then I made a lot of changes throughout the year in 2023, and then once I met my goals at the end of this year, I reran everything. So I want to run through what those things are. So I wanted to get my body weight down. I was 190 at the end of last year. I'd been weightlifting and eating a lot, and I was way too heavy, so I wanted to get that down. I was less worried about my weight than anything, but what I wanted to get was my waist to height ratio fixed. So I was about 38 and a half inches around my gut, and I needed to be at 34 and a half. And I've done that over the year. Over 2023, I've done that because I wanted this to be 0.5, and it was much higher than that. To me, that's the number one indicator of metabolic health is your waist half your height. And anybody can measure that. My body fat also went down from about 25%, and I just use one of those scales that you stand on that shoots electrical pulses through you. I'm not sure this is even an accurate number, but what I'm looking for is the trend. And I'd like to ultimately get below 20% body fat. I'd like to be between 17 and 20%. I don't want to have super low body fat because I don't think that's good for you either. All that went the direction I wanted it to go. My body fat did not go down as much as I had hoped that it would. I'm fine with that. I'm actually fine. My weight's up a little higher than that right now because I'm changing my diet up a little bit, and I'm fine with that too. I'm just watching this waist size. If it starts going up while my weight's going up and my body fat are going up, then I change my diet to fix that. Now, my resting pulse it's always been kind of low. It's always been in the 60s, and last year when I pulled my blood work, it was around mid 60s, and it's really low now. Like, it got to the point low this year. Like, I put my heart rate monitor on and just sat in the chair, and it was like down around 45. So actually, when I was doing all this blood work, I did it through my doctor. This time I went to a doctor here, and that was one of the concerns I had was my resting pulse rate too low? They basically said, no, you're fine. So I feel like that's fine. When I use this pulse to calculate my VO2 max, it's kind of off the charts high, which I did not expect, but I don't think that's bad because it just means my heart's not having to pump much and very hard to fuel on my body and all the cells and all that kind of stuff. So it's good to have a high VO2 max. The fasting glucose, tons of people run fasting glucose, or they run a glucose test. Lots of people wear those monitors. Mine was higher last year than I wanted it to be. So it was 108, and I want it to be below 100. This year when I reran it, it was 85. All these next tests are basically telling me my metabolic health. They're telling me, is my body doing a good job of processing nutrients and sugars and things like that? The one that I really wanted to check and I paid for last year was my fasting insulin. And it came in at 6, which is higher than 4, which is where I wanted to be. And this year, once I got some of these other numbers in range, it dropped down to 1.9, which is really low and fine with me. My blood pressure is always fine. It was a tad bit elevated when I had it pulled. My blood pressure will jump up and down just because I lift weights, and if I'm lifting heavy weights, your blood pressure is going to go up from that. So my blood pressure is fine. I have it red here because it's a little elevated, but I could care less. It's not a big deal. There's some calculations where there's a website that you can go to and you can put in some of the information that was prior to, your waistline and some of these fasting glucose numbers and all that. And it'll basically tell you, is your body mass good and is your waistline good and what percentile are you in? And it's basically telling you your metabolic health. It's called the MET-S Z-score, and mine is great. I mean, it was actually fine when I started. I was in the top 23% on both those, and now I'm in the top 10-ish% on both those. So anything below 25% on those, and I'm happy. And then the Homo IR is a similar version to that. Again, it was not bad before, but it's way, way better now. And that's just another score. You want it to be below 1.9. And it takes some of those other numbers from above and basically spits out a score to tell you, are you metabolically healthy? All that went in the direction that I wanted it to go and I expected it to go. And it was good to see. I mean, it's good to see if you get some of this other stuff working correctly, all of it helps your metabolic health, which is ultimately going to make you more healthy long term. It's going to decrease your risk of getting all kinds of nasty things happening in your life. And that's the goal of all this, is to be metabolically healthy. There's another score called the CRP. It's called a CRP. It's I think it's a calcium reactive protein high sensitivity test or something like that. I forget what it is. It's basically an indication of are you at a higher risk of a heart attack event? I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about it. I just know what the score, it's supposed to be below 3. And last year when I ran it, it was 2.5. I did not rerun that this year because I just didn't want to pay for it. I used some form of that, I think, to calculate a coronary risk ratio, which was also lower than 4.97, where it was supposed to be last year. So I wasn't really worried about that. There was one other test I wanted to get to make sure my heart was fine and I wasn't going to have a heart attack, and that's a coronary calcium score, and I had that done this year for the first time. I did that in lieu of those others, instead of redoing those other 2 tests, and they basically put you in a machine. It's like they're spinning a magnet around you and basically taking pictures of all the arteries and around your heart. If it comes back at below 100, you're in good shape. and I think there's 4 different scores or something that roll up into that, and mine came up at 0.56. 3 of my scores were 0, and 1 of them was 0.56, which is kind of off the scales low. I think with all 3 of those pointing that I don't have any heart attack risk. I think that also, rules out some stroke risk. I'm happy with all that. And then you get into the cholesterol numbers. Now, like I said in prior part of this video, I was full carnivore for most of 2022 and 21 and, most of 2023, where I was adding in carbs back in. If you listen to mainstream doctors and media, they're going to tell you you've got to watch your cholesterol levels. I don't give a flying rip about my cholesterol levels. I really don't. I think you want your total cholesterol between 210 and 249, and mine's 213. My LDL's real high. They want it to be lower than 100, and mine's 146, and I don't care. I don't care at all. My triglyceride is lower and headed lower than it has been, so it's down to 42. And then my HDL is up from where it was, and it's kind of at the top end of the range where they say it's supposed to be. Again, I don't give a flying rip about any of that. I don't believe that high cholesterol even matters. I don't care, because really all I care about is this final number here, which is your triglyceride to HDL ratio, and you want it to be below 2. And mine is 0.7 and headed lower, and I think that is perfectly fine. And some doctor will watch this and tell me I'm a stupid idiot, and I could care less. The nurse who helped me pull all this and go over all this, when I did it this year, I went to an actual nurse. Last year, I just went to a Any Test Now lab, and I ordered my own blood work, and I didn't talk to a doctor at all. This year I went because I wanted somebody to look at it with me. And she kind of mentioned, that looking at last year's numbers that, oh, well, that's a little high. We may want to talk about a statin. And I basically said, no, we're not doing that. And she didn't bring it back up. So I don't think she's too concerned with it. And even if she was, I'm not sure I would be. Now, I've already talked about ferritin. It was really high. I got it almost too low. I want it to be between 50 and 70, which is pretty low. I got it a little too low because I think I gave blood too many times. So what I did during this year is I did not give blood during 2023. And I just wanted to see what it would go back up to based on how I was eating. And it went up to 152, which is higher than I wanted it to be. So I just did the math, and I figured out it usually drops about 30 points every time I do a blood donation, which is what it's supposed to do. I figured out I need to give blood 3 times this year to kind of keep it in the range I want it to be in. So I'm going to do that this year. I'm going to give blood 3 times so that I can keep my iron level at the range I want it to be in. Now, testosterone, this is a pretty important one because for a male, it's just hugely important on a lot of fronts. Mine was super low. The reference range, I'm not outside the reference range, but I think the reference range on testosterone is stupid. Mind-numbingly stupid almost. So according to the reference range, I'm fine, even at 458 or 396. I expected that my testosterone would go up this year because of all the other stuff I was doing, like just adding carbs back in and going to the gym carbed up and not lifting fasted was going to be a big deal. And my testosterone definitely went up for the year. I think it was up 30% since I pulled it back in 2021. And I'm happy with that. I'd be more happy if it was above 700. So that's my focus kind of this year. I want to get my iron level back down, and I'm going to keep working on my testosterone and pushing it higher. And there's all kind of things you can do with your diet and with lifting weights and making sure you're eating right, and being in the sun and eating, eggs and all that kind of stuff that I'll just keep doing and doing more of it. And I think that number will go up. 594 for a 51-year-old is not terrible. And I feel fine. I don't do any testosterone replacement and don't want to. I don't take any medications at all and don't want to. I'm pretty adverse to taking medications. I will take an Advil if my head hurts every once in a while, but that's pretty much it. So I definitely don't want to get on a testosterone therapy if I don't have to. But if it starts dropping and it starts impacting me not being able to recover from the gym and my body's just kind of failing me in that way, then I definitely would think about supplementing testosterone, but I just don't need to right now. So my SHBGs, I think sex hormone binding globulin number, it went up through the year, and I want it to be higher. It went up pretty substantially from where it was, so I was happy with that, and I expected that. I wanted to go higher, and then you can use these numbers to kind of punch those into a website, and you can calculate your free testosterone and get your bioavailable testosterone, and you can come up with, I would like those numbers to be higher than they are. They're not horrible. They went in the right direction, definitely, but I think if I get my testosterone higher and keep working on getting my SHBG to be higher as well, then that free testosterone and bioavailable testosterone numbers will go up. And that's definitely something I want and will be working towards in the year 2024. I did a PSA test. Like I said, I've only had checkups. I had a checkup like 5 years ago. I don't really go to the doctor, and I've only ever had every time they say they want to stick a finger in the butt, I'm like, no, that is an exit. That is not an entry. So I was like, we're in the year 2020 something, and there's got to be a better way. So I'd researched, and you can do your PSA test, and it'll basically tell you if you've got something going on with your prostate, and that score is really low. I'll pull that every couple of years, and what you're wanting to look for as you get older as a man, you're wanting to make sure, one, it's low, but that it's also not accelerating and trending higher. So as long as it's below 4, I feel like that's fine, and I didn't have to have anybody stick anything in my butt to tell that, which is good. My TSH, now this one's really important, and I think hugely important to every number on this page, and something I wasn't really paying attention to. So your thyroid stimulating hormone, I want that to be below 1.5, and it was not. It was at 2, and that doesn't surprise me at all because I was going into the gym, working out, fasted, not enough carbs in my diet, and my body's just basically running itself ragged, trying to convert protein. My liver's having to convert and make carbs for the body to use, converting fat to carbs and all that. You're hurting your thyroid's function if you're not properly fueling your body. I was not surprised when that pulled as a 2. I was also not surprised when it was lower this year. So I feel like that's fine, and I think that has everything to do with all this other metabolic stuff going in line and my testosterone moving in the right direction. If that number's out of whack, you can pull some other numbers. So like you can pull T3 and T4. My T4 was just part of the test that I had run, and it was within range. So I think my thyroid's working as expected, and I've not always felt that way. I mean, I've always thought my thyroid was out of whack for a variety of reasons. So I feel a lot better than I have felt in a long time, and I think that is a huge, that test right there is huge. Get your insulin, get your fasting insulin checked and make sure it's below 4, and then get your TSH checked and make sure it's in range, and then get your testosterone checked and make sure it's in range, higher than range, and then just take a tape measure and measure around your gut. And is it half your height? If you do those, you're done. I've done a lot more than that. And one other thing I did was they were like, oh, you're 50, you need to go get a colonoscopy. And I was like, again, we're not sticking anything in Dino's butt. And I'm definitely not, you're not sticking cameras and stuff in there. But we need to check for your risk of colon cancer, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. Well, we're not doing it. They make a Cologuard test where you poop in a thing and then you send it in and they test it to see if you have colon cancer. And that's about as much as I know about it. I went with that versus the colonoscopy. There was a couple of reasons. One, the risk of getting colon cancer is pretty low. The risk associated with colonoscomies going bad is probably as much as getting colon cancer. So why would I take a medical procedure that would give me as much risk by it being performed as the thing it's checking for? That's stupid. Not to mention, I've been reading about regenerative farming and all that stuff, and I just think your gut, all the stuff that's in your gut and in your intestines, all that stuff's pretty important. And when you go in to have a colonoscopy, they clean all that out. You drink all this stuff that basically just empties your entire system out and just completely obliterates your entire gut microbiome. And I definitely don't want to do that because I feel like my gut microbiome's in pretty good shape right now with what I've been feeding it for the last year. And it's obviously good with all this blood work. So I feel like I'm in really, really good shape. And the blood work that I ran kind of supports that.